After Effects CS6 added a lot of controls for reflections, and they can really improve the effectiveness of a 3D scene, especially when objects or the camera are moving. But a lot of times elements are facing the camera, and anything that would be reflected in those objects would have to be situated behind the camera, which could be really tricky to set up. Well, to make this process simple, After Effects CS6 allows you to take any 2D layer and transform it into an environment layer. Let's select this tree photo, for example, which is an imported JPEG file. It's also much larger than the composition, as we can see if I open up its layer window. I'll right-click and choose Environment Layer. Immediately we see the layer gets stretched a bit. How come? Well, an environment map is basically a texture mapped onto a large sphere, with the sphere perpetually centered on the camera. If we move our camera around, you can see that the environment map moves with the camera. And if we move far enough around, we can actually see a seam where the right side of the map meets the left. If this seam bugs you, if it shows up in a reflection, it's easy to fix, or at least reduce. It turns out that you can apply effects directly to environment maps. So in this case, there's a very useful Psycore effect called Reptile that will assist us. Just apply Reptile, ignore most of it, and at the bottom adjust this Blend Borders slider to a value that looks good to you. In our case, about 10% gets rid of the hard edge, which was all I really wanted to accomplish. Let's spin the camera back around to the front and turn on our text layer here. I have the reflections property set up for this text layer so that the reflections are slightly soft, and there's a front color cast on our text and on the extrusion. I also have the camera animated a bit. Now for this scene, I want to see the trees reflected in our text. But I don't actually want to see the environment map in the final scene. So if we twirl open our properties for the environment map, you can see that we can adjust its rotation and its opacity, but if we crank down its opacity, we can no longer see it in the reflections, so that's no good. But it turns out this last option, appears in reflections, is not simply an on-off switch. It cycles through three options: on, only, and off. When set to on, it appears both as a background and reflected in our text. When set to off, it appears only as a background. But when set to only, the background disappears and our reflection just appears on our text, which gives me exactly the effect I'm looking for, as you can see in this final render.